The Galactic Council had seen many species rise to power. They had watched the Vorthen crush 100 worlds under their war machines. They had observed the Krell absorb entire civilizations into their hive mind. They had documented the Thraxian expansion that turned star systems into burning graves. But none of them, not a single member of the ancient council, had ever seen anything like the humans. Ambassador Kira Chen stood before the massive assembly hall, her small frame almost comical against the towering alien delegates. The Vorthen representative, a creature of metal and muscle standing 3 meters tall, looked down at her with something between amusement and contempt. His armor gleamed under the chamber lights, each piece decorated with symbols of the worlds he had helped conquer. "You request membership in the Galactic Council," the Vorthen spoke, its voice like grinding gears. "Your species has only achieved interstellar travel for 40 of your years. What do you offer us?" Kira smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and open. "We offer friendship." Laughter echoed through the hall. The sound came from many different species, each expressing amusement in their own way. The Krell clicked their mandibles in unison, a sound like 1,000 insects stirring. The Thraxians hissed their contempt through rows of needle-sharp teeth. Even the ancient elderlings, who rarely showed emotion, allowed themselves a soft rumble that might have been their version of a chuckle. "Friendship," the Vorthen repeated the word like it tasted bad. "The galaxy does not run on friendship, human. It runs on power, on resources, on the ability to take what you need and defend what you have. Your friendship means nothing to species who have carved their names across the stars in fire and blood." "I understand," Kira said. She was not bothered by their laughter. She had expected it. Her briefings had prepared her for exactly this response. "But perhaps I can show you what I mean. May I share a story?" The council fell silent. Stories were one of the few things that traveled between species without translation problems. Every intelligent being understood the concept of a story. Even the most warlike species gathered around fires or their equivalent to share tales of glory and loss. "Proceed," the Elderling Council head said. Its form shifted like smoke in a bottle, never quite settling into a fixed shape. The Elderlings were the oldest species in the known galaxy, beings who had watched stars form and die. They rarely spoke, but when they did, others listened. Kira cleared her throat. 3 years ago, one of our colony ships encountered a Drelthian vessel. The Drelthians were dying. Their home world had been destroyed by the Thraxian expansion. They were the last survivors of their kind, drifting through space in a ship that was falling apart. They had no food, no fuel, and no hope. The Thraxian delegate shifted uncomfortably in its seat. The Drelthians had been a minor species, barely worth mentioning in Thraxian records. Their destruction had been a footnote in Thraxian history, a single line in a ledger of conquered worlds. Few even remembered they had existed. "Our captain had a choice," Kira continued. "She could have ignored the distress signal. It would have been easy. We had schedules to keep, resources to conserve. She could have taken what resources they had and left them to die. No one would have known. No one would have blamed her. Instead, she shared our food. She gave them fuel from our reserves. And when they asked where they could go to be safe, she offered them a home." "This is weakness," the Vorthen said, leaning forward in his seat. "You gave resources to strangers. You endangered your own mission for beings you had never met. You gained nothing from this transaction." "Did we?" Kira asked. "The Drelthians are engineers. Before their world was destroyed, they had developed technology we had never imagined. Within a year of joining us, they had improved our ship engines by 40%. They built us tools we could never have created ourselves. They taught us sciences that would have taken us decades to discover on our own. And they did this freely, without payment or coercion, because we had been kind to them when we had no reason to be." The hall was quiet now. The laughter had stopped. Some delegates looked thoughtful. Others looked confused, as if they were trying to understand a language they did not speak. "That is one story," the Krell representative said. Its voice came from many mouths at once, a harmony of identical sounds that made human ears hurt. The Krell were a hive mind, millions of individuals sharing a single consciousness. The concept of individual kindness was almost incomprehensible to them. One lucky encounter does not prove a pattern. Then let me tell you another, Kira said, and another after that, because this is not one story, this is who we are. Far across the galaxy, on a world called Haven Prime, a young human named Marcus Webb was demonstrating what Ambassador Chen meant. Marcus was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was a farmer, the son of farmers who had come to this new world to grow food. His parents had worked the fields of Kansas, and their parents before them. When the call went out for colonists, Marcus had signed up without hesitation. He wanted to feel soil under his fingers, to watch seeds grow into crops, to build something that would feed the hungry. Haven Prime was supposed to be empty. The surveys had said so. Robot probes had scanned the planet for 3 years before declaring it suitable for human habitation. The official reports listed it as a temperate world with fertile soil and no intelligent life. But the surveys had been wrong. The Sylph had lived on Haven Prime for 10,000 years. They were small creatures, barely reaching Marcus's knee. Their skin was like bark, rough and brown, and their eyes glowed with soft green light. They had no technology that the probes would recognize, no metal buildings or electronic signals. They lived in the forests, in harmony with the land, invisible to machines that looked only for the signs of advancement. They had hidden from the human ships, certain that these new beings would destroy them as others had tried to do before. Long ago, before the Sylph learned to hide, visitors had come from the sky. Those visitors had not been kind. The Sylph remembered, in stories passed down through generations, the burning and the screaming and the long silence that followed. So they hid, and they watched, and they waited for the destruction to begin again. Marcus found them on his 3rd week, when he was digging irrigation channels near the eastern forest. The work was hard but satisfying, the kind of labor that left a man tired in a good way. He was thinking about supper, about the meal his wife would have waiting for him, when he saw movement in the trench he had just dug. A Sylph child had fallen in. The walls were too steep for its small limbs to climb, and the mud at the bottom was deep enough to trap it. The child was crying, a high keening sound that Marcus had never heard before but understood immediately. He could have ignored it. The creature was strange and unknown. For all he knew, it might be dangerous. The protocols for encountering alien life were clear. Report it, avoid contact, wait for the experts. Instead, Marcus reached down and gently lifted the small being from the mud. The child was lighter than he expected, no heavier than a human toddler. Its bark skin was warm under his fingers, and its green eyes looked up at him with an expression that needed no translation. Fear, gratitude, hope. The child's mother appeared then, emerging from the trees with a spear made of sharpened stone. She was terrified, ready to fight to save her offspring, ready to die if that was what it took. Behind her, Marcus could see more of the Sylph, dozens of them, watching from the shadows with weapons raised. Marcus set the child down carefully. He stepped back and raised his hands to show he held no weapons. Then slowly, he sat down on the ground, making himself as small and unthreatening as possible. "I am not going to hurt you," he said. He knew they could not understand his words, but he hoped they might understand his tone, the gentleness in his voice. "This is your home. I did not know. I am sorry if we frightened you." The mother took her child and ran. The Sylph disappeared into the forest, vanishing so quickly and so completely that Marcus almost wondered if he had imagined them. He sat there for a long time, thinking about what had just happened, about what he should do next. 3 days later, he found a basket on his doorstep. Inside were fruits he had never seen before, purple and gold and sweet as honey when he tasted them. No note because the Sylph had no writing, but the message was clear. Marcus left a basket of his own by the forest edge that evening. Seeds from Earth, vegetables that grew well in alien soil. He included simple instructions in pictures, drawings of how to plant and water and harvest. The next morning, the seeds were gone. This continued for weeks, gifts exchanged in silence, a language built from actions rather than words. Marcus left tools and received medicines in return. He left cloth and received jewelry made of polished wood and colored stone. Each exchange was a conversation, a slow building of trust. When Marcus finally saw the Sylph again, they did not run. They watched him work from the edge of the forest, and then, one by one, they began to help. They knew Haven Prime in ways Marcus never could. They showed him which soil was best for which crops, which valleys flooded in spring, which hillsides got the most sun. They led him to underground springs that the surveys had missed, pure water that could feed his fields through the driest summers. They taught him which plants were medicine and which were poison, which animals were safe and which should be avoided. Knowledge 10,000 years in the making, shared freely with a stranger who had shown kindness to a frightened child. In return, Marcus taught them about metal tools that made their work easier. He showed them how to build structures that could withstand the harsh winters, how to store food for the lean seasons. He shared his meals when theirs ran short, and they shared theirs when his crops failed in the unexpected frost of his first year. When the colony administration sent officials to investigate why Marcus's farm was producing 3 times more food than any other in the sector, they found him working side by side with creatures they had never seen before. The Sylph did not hide from them. They had learned that not all large beings meant them harm. "What are these?" the official asked, reaching for his weapon. His hand shook slightly. He had never seen anything like the Sylph before, and his training told him that unknown aliens were dangerous until proven otherwise. Marcus stepped between them, putting his own body in the path of the weapon. "These are my neighbors," he said. His voice was calm but firm, the voice of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "These are my friends." The official hesitated. This was not in any protocol. There were procedures for encountering alien life, forms to fill out, quarantines to enforce, experts to be consulted. But Marcus was looking at him with such certainty, such calm confidence, that the official found himself lowering his hand. "Friends," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes," Marcus said, "friends, and I think you will find that friends are worth more than all the protocols in the galaxy." Word of the Sylph spread through the human colony. Some were afraid. Some were angry that these creatures had been hiding while humans worked to tame what they thought was an empty world. Some demanded that the Sylph be removed, relocated, eliminated as a threat to human settlement. But others, many others, were curious. They came to Marcus's farm to see these strange beings for themselves. They brought gifts of their own, simple things, offerings of peace and goodwill. The Sylph were cautious at first, but they had learned from Marcus that not all large beings meant them harm. Slowly, carefully, they began to trust. Within a year, Haven Prime had changed beyond recognition. Humans and Sylph worked together, building a community that neither could have created alone. The Sylph shared knowledge that had accumulated over 10,000 years of living on this world. The humans shared technology that seemed like magic to the small beings. Together, they built something new, something that belonged to both of them. And when ships from the Vorthan Empire arrived to claim Haven Prime as a resource world, they found not a scattered colony of soft humans, but a unified people ready to defend their home. The Vorthan commander looked at the human and Sylph standing together, weapons raised, faces determined. He counted their numbers, calculated their strength, ran the mathematics of conquest that had served his people for 1,000 years. And then he made a decision that would echo through the galaxy. He turned his ships around and left. Not because he feared their weapons. The Vorthan had conquered species with far greater military might. Not because he doubted his own strength. His fleet could have reduced Haven Prime to cinders in a matter of hours. But he saw something in the way the humans and Sylph stood together, something that made him uneasy in ways he could not name. They were not fighting because they had to. They were fighting because they chose to. They were defending not just their homes but each other. And the commander, who had seen 1,000 worlds fall to Vorthenmight, recognized something in their eyes that he had never seen before. He reported to his superiors that Haven Prime was not worth the trouble. He did not mention the strange feeling in his chest when he watched the celebration that followed his departure, when humans lifted Sylph onto their shoulders and danced together under alien stars. That feeling had a name, though the Vorthen had no word for it. Humans called it hope. Ambassador Chen continued her address to the Galactic Council, but now she was not alone. Screens around the chamber showed images from human space, evidence of what she described. Pictures of humans and aliens working together, building together, living together. On Haven Prime, humans and Sylph have built a civilization together. On Kepler Station, we work alongside the Drelthian refugees. On the frontier worlds, we have formed partnerships with 17 species that had never before trusted outsiders. Each partnership is different, but they all share one thing in common. They began with friendship. Pretty pictures, the Thraxian delegate said, its voice dripping with contempt. But what happens when these friends betray you? What happens when they take what you have given them and use it against you? What happens when your precious friendship becomes a weapon pointed at your heart? It has happened, Kira admitted. She would not lie to the council even if the truth was difficult. Not everyone we have trusted has been worthy of that trust. We have been hurt. We have been betrayed. There have been moments when we questioned whether our way was wise, whether we were fools for believing in the goodness of others. She paused, looking around the hall at creatures who had built their civilizations on conquest and domination, who had learned through bitter experience that trust was a weakness to be exploited. But we have not stopped offering friendship, she continued, because we have learned something important, something that took us centuries to understand, that cost us more pain than I can describe. And what is that? The Thraxian asked. Every species in this room has conquered others. You have built empires through force, through fear, through subjugation, and every one of those empires has eventually fallen. The conquered rise up, the fearful find courage, the subjugated break their chains. This is not opinion. This is history. This is mathematics. Empires built on conquest always fall. The council shifted uneasily. She was speaking truth that they did not like to hear, truth that their own histories confirmed. But friendship, Kira said, friendship does not create enemies waiting for the chance to strike back. It creates allies who stand beside you willingly. It creates bonds that grow stronger over time instead of weaker. It creates something that conquest never can. And what is that? The elderling asked, its form leaning forward with interest. Kira smiled again, that warm and genuine expression that seemed so strange in a hall built for threats and negotiations. Family. The word hung in the air. Some delegates did not understand it. Others understood it too well, remembering bonds they had severed in the name of expansion, connections they had destroyed in the pursuit of power. We do not offer you treaties, Kira said. We do not offer you trade agreements or military alliances or political advantages. We offer you something simpler and more valuable. We offer you the chance to belong, to be part of something larger than yourselves, to know that when you need help, there will be hands reaching out to catch you. She looked at the Vorthen delegate who was trying very hard to look unaffected. We know you have been alone for a long time. We know that trust feels like weakness, but it is not. It is the beginning of strength, the only kind of strength that lasts. On Haven Prime, Marcus Webb was an old man now. His hair had turned white and his hands shook when he worked. But he still tended his farm, still rose with the sun, still loved the land that had become his home. His granddaughter ran through the fields, chasing a sylph child who moved like water through the crops. Their laughter mixed together, human and alien, but somehow the same. The sound of joy was universal. The Sylph elder, the mother who had once pointed a spear at Marcus, sat beside him on his porch. She was old too, her bark skin faded to gray, her eyes dimmer than they had once been. But she still came to visit him every day as she had for 40 years. They did not speak. They had learned each other's languages over the years, but some things did not need words. They simply sat together, watching their grandchildren play, knowing that this was what they had built. Not an empire, not a conquest, something better. A friendship that would outlast them both. The debate in the Galactic Council continued for 3 days. Delegates argued and counter-argued, bringing forth evidence and counter-evidence. Old grievances were aired. Old wounds were opened. The Vorthons spoke of the necessity of strength. The Thraxians warned of the danger of allowing such idealistic fools into positions of power. The Krell simply observed, their hive mind processing data that their individual members could not comprehend. But others spoke in favor of the humans. Small species, weak species, those who had survived the conquest of others and remembered what it felt like to be afraid. They had heard about the Drelthians. They had heard about the Sylph. They had heard stories that sounded too good to be true, stories of kindness and generosity that seemed impossible in a galaxy defined by war. And yet, one by one, they stood to speak. My people were dying, a delegate from a species so small they needed a floating platform to be seen said. The Pelori had been conquered 3 times in their history, each time rebuilt only to be knocked down again. A human ship found us drifting in the void, our colony's ship crippled by a meteor strike. They asked for nothing. They saved us because they could. They gave us food and medicine and a new course to follow. We owe them everything. The humans trade fairly, another delegate said. The Marketh were traders by nature and they knew the value of honesty. They do not cheat. They do not threaten. They do not use their strength to force bargains in their favor. When we had nothing to offer, they still shared their food. When we could not pay, they said we could pay later when we were able. We have never met a species like them. They teach their children to be kind, a third delegate added. The Venori had visited human worlds, had walked among them, had watched them live their lives. I have seen how they raise their young. They teach them that all beings have value. All beings deserve respect. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is the foundation of a civilization that can last. The Vorthon delegate listened with growing frustration. These are stories, he said. Propaganda. No species acts this way without hidden motives. The humans are manipulating you, building alliances through false kindness, preparing for the day when they will reveal their true nature. Perhaps, Ambassador Chen replied. She had not spoken in 2 days, letting others make the case for her people. Or perhaps you have been conquerors for so long that you have forgotten there is another way. Perhaps you have become so accustomed to suspicion that you cannot recognize honesty when you see it. The elderling council head raised one of its shifting limbs. The hall fell silent immediately. When the elderling spoke, all listened. We have watched many species, it said. Its voice was like wind through ancient trees, carrying the weight of millions of years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have observed the patterns of power and their inevitable conclusions. We have documented the mathematics of conquest and the physics of collapse, and in all our long existence, we have never seen a species quite like the humans. It turned to face Ambassador Chen, its form solidifying into something almost like a face, a gesture of respect it rarely offered. You puzzle us, it said. You frighten us in ways you do not understand, not because of your weapons or your technology. These are ordinary. We have seen greater weapons, more advanced technology. But this thing you call friendship, this willingness to give without taking, to trust without guarantee, this is something new. Kira waited, her heart beating fast despite her calm exterior. If what you say is true, the elderling continued, then you represent something the galaxy has never seen before. something that could change the balance of power in ways we cannot predict, something that could unravel the patterns we thought were fixed. This is dangerous. Many things are dangerous, Kira said. War is dangerous. Conquest is dangerous. The question is not whether something is dangerous, but whether the danger is worth the reward. And what reward do you offer? Kira thought of Marcus Webb and his Sylph neighbors. She thought of the Drelthian engineers who had become like family to the crew that saved them. She thought of all the small moments of connection that were happening across human space, right now, as she spoke. Thousands of friendships being formed, thousands of bonds being built. The chance to build something that lasts, she said. The chance to be part of something bigger than any one species. The chance to stop being afraid of each other. The chance, after millions of years of war and conquest, to try something different. The elderling was silent for a long moment. Its form shifted through colors and shapes, patterns that might have been thought or emotion. "We will consider your words," it said finally. "This council will vote in one cycle. Until then, you are welcome among us." Kira bowed her head, "Thank you." As she left the chamber, she felt the eyes of 100 species watching her. Some were hostile, some were curious, some were hopeful. She did not know what the vote would bring. The council was old and set in its ways, suspicious of change, protective of the order it had maintained for millennia. But she knew that the humans had done what they always did. They had offered friendship. They had told the truth. They had shown who they were. The rest was up to the galaxy. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 3 days later, the Galactic Council gathered once more. Ambassador Chen stood in the same spot, wearing the same patient smile. But now there was tension in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. Delegates who had barely acknowledged each other for centuries were whispering together. Old alliances were shifting. New possibilities were being considered. The elderling announced the results. By a margin of 7 votes, the human species is hereby granted observer status in the Galactic Council. Not full membership, not yet, but a beginning. The Vorthan delegate stormed from the chamber, his heavy footsteps echoing like thunder. The Thraxians hissed their displeasure and withdrew their delegation in protest. Some other species followed, unwilling to accept this change in the order of things. But others, many others, approached Ambassador Chen to offer congratulations. They came in waves, species she had never met, beings she had only heard of in reports. They wanted to shake her hand, to touch her shoulder, to make connection in whatever way their physiology allowed. "We did not think it possible," the small delegate on the floating platform said. The Pelori's eyes were wet with what Kira recognized as tears. "We did not think anyone could change the council's mind. We thought we would be conquered again and again forever." Kira shook their hand gently, mindful of how small and fragile they were. "We did not change their minds," she said. "We just showed them who we are. The rest they decided for themselves." "And what now?" another delegate asked. The Venori seemed almost excited, a rare emotion for their normally stoic species. "What happens after this?" Kira looked around the chamber at the strange and wonderful beings who surrounded her. Some were still enemies, some might never be anything else, but others were looking at her with something new in their eyes. Not fear, not suspicion, something that looked almost like hope. "Now," she said, "we make friends." On Haven Prime, the celebration lasted 3 days. Humans and Sylph danced together, sang together, shared food and stories and laughter. They did not fully understand what had happened in the distant council chamber, but they knew it was good. Marcus Webb watched the celebration from his porch. He was too old to dance now, too tired to join the festivities, but he could still smile. His granddaughter ran up to him, breathless with excitement. Alina was 12 years old, born on Haven Prime, the first generation to know no world but this one. "Grandfather, they say we are part of the galaxy now. They say other species will come to visit. They say everything is going to change." "Is that so?" Marcus said. "Yes, and they will be our friends just like the Sylph. We will show them how we live here, how we work together. Maybe they will stay with us." Marcus looked at the Sylph elder, who had come to join him as she always did. She met his eyes and nodded, a gesture she had learned from him all those years ago. "Yes," Marcus said, "just like the Sylph." His granddaughter ran back to the celebration. Marcus and the elder sat in comfortable silence, watching the future unfold. It would not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. There would be challenges and conflicts, misunderstandings and failures. But the humans had learned long ago that the path of friendship was worth walking, no matter how difficult it might be. Because in the end, conquerors always fell, empires always crumbled, fear always gave way to resistance. But friendship, true friendship, could last forever. And that was something the universe had never seen before. 5 years after the council vote, the galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. It started small, as such things often do. A Vorthan trading vessel suffered engine failure near human space. The crew expected to die, stranded in the void, because no one helped the Vorthan. Everyone feared them too much, or hated them for old conquests, or simply could not imagine extending aid to their traditional enemies. But a human ship answered their distress call. Not a military vessel or a diplomatic mission. Just a cargo hauler named the Jenny Me, captained by a woman named Sarah Park who had never heard of any reason why she should not help people in trouble. She brought them food and water. Her engineer worked for 2 days to fix their engines, crawling through Vorthan machinery that had been designed to be repaired only by Vorthan hands. When the Vorthan captain offered payment, Sarah refused. "Just help someone else when you get the chance," she said. "That is how we do things." The Vorthan captain was confused. This was not how the galaxy worked. This was not how anything worked. There were debts and obligations, favors owed and favors called in. No one did anything for free. No one helped without expecting something in return. But he took his repaired ship and returned home, carrying a story that spread through his people like fire through dry grass. More encounters followed. A Thraxian research team stranded on a hostile world, their ship destroyed by an unexpected storm, was rescued by human colonists who had every reason to let them suffer. The Thraxians had conquered human allies. They had killed human friends. Yet here were humans offering shelter and food and transportation home. A Krell individual somehow separated from the hive mind, alone for the first time in its existence, was taken in by a human family who did not understand it but tried anyway. They could not hear its thoughts or share its consciousness, but they could offer warmth and food and company. They could show it that being alone did not have to mean being lonely. Small moments, scattered across the stars, each one adding to a growing pattern, each one proving that the humans meant what they said. Ambassador Chen watched these stories collect with quiet satisfaction. She had known this would happen. It was why she had pushed so hard for council membership, even the limited observer status they had been granted. Contact bred familiarity. Familiarity bred understanding. Understanding bred trust. "You are changing us," the elderling council head told her during one of their private meetings. Its form was less shifting now, more settled, as if it had grown comfortable in her presence. "This is unsettling." "We are not trying to change anyone," Kira said. "We are just being ourselves." "That is what is unsettling. Your way of being is contagious. It spreads through contact, through example. Species that have been enemies for millennia are beginning to question their enmity." Kira considered this. Is that a bad thing? The elderling shifted, its form flowing through configurations that might have been emotions too complex for human names. "We do not know. We have never experienced anything like it. The Vorthan are questioning their conquest doctrine. Young warriors are asking why they fight, what they gain, whether there might be another way. The Thraxians are debating whether fear is the only way to maintain order. Even the Krell are showing signs of individual thought, members separating from the hive to explore what it means to be one rather than many. And this frightens you. It does not frighten us, the elderling said. We are too old for fear. We have seen too much, lived through too many changes to be afraid of one more. But it surprises us, and that is rare enough to be notable. We thought we had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. We were wrong. On Vorthan Prime, a debate was indeed taking place. The warrior culture that had defined their species for millennia was being challenged by young voices who asked uncomfortable questions. Why do we conquer? One young Vorthan asked in a public forum. His armor was new, unmarked by battle, and his eyes held a light that made the elders uneasy. What do we gain that we could not get through trade, through cooperation, through friendship? We gain respect, an elder answered. His armor was scarred and dented, a history of violence written in metal. We gain security through strength. We gain the knowledge that no one will dare to attack us. But the humans are not strong, another young voice countered. They are weak by our standards. A single Vorthan warrior could defeat 10 of them in combat, and yet they have something we do not. They have friends who would die for them, not because they are forced to, but because they choose to. The debate grew heated. Old ways clashed with new ideas. Some called the young questioners traitors, corrupted by alien influence, weakened by exposure to human softness. Others listened with growing interest, wondering if perhaps, after all these centuries, there might be another path. Change was coming to Vorthan Prime. Slow, difficult, painful change, but change nonetheless. On Haven Prime, the 10th anniversary of first contact between humans and Sylph was celebrated with a festival that drew visitors from across the sector. Humans and Sylph and Drelthians, and a dozen other species gathered to remember how it all began. Marcus Webb did not attend. He had passed away 2 years before, surrounded by family and friends of multiple species. His funeral had been the largest in the colony's history, attended by beings who had traveled from distant stars to pay their respects. But his granddaughter, Elena Webb, stood at the center of the celebration. She was grown now, an ambassador in her own right, carrying forward her grandfather's legacy. My grandfather taught me that every being deserves kindness, she told the gathered crowd. He taught me that fear is easy and friendship is hard, but that the hard path leads to better places. He taught me that we are all neighbors in this universe, whether we know it yet or not. The Sylph elder was there too, older than anyone could believe, her bark skin now almost pure white. She stood beside Elena as she had once stood beside Marcus, a living bridge between two peoples. Marcus gave me a gift, the elder said, speaking in the human language she had learned over decades of friendship. He gave me hope. He showed me that the universe did not have to be a place of fear and hiding. He showed me that some beings could be trusted. She looked out at the crowd, at all the different faces and forms gathered together. I give you the same gift now. Trust each other, be kind to each other, and when someone offers you friendship, have the courage to accept it. The applause that followed came in many forms, from clapping hands to clicking mandibles to sounds that had no human equivalent. But the feeling behind it was universal. In the council chamber, things had changed as well. Where once humans had been dismissed and mocked, now their delegation was sought out for advice. Other species wanted to know their secrets, wanted to understand how they built such strong alliances. Ambassador Chen, older now but still wearing her patient smile, tried to explain. There is no secret, she said to a group of young delegates from a dozen species. They had gathered in one of the informal meeting rooms, sitting together in a way that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. We simply treat others the way we would want to be treated. We offer help without expecting reward. We keep our promises. We admit our mistakes. That is all. But that is so simple, a young Krell individual said. The fact that it was speaking as an individual rather than as a voice of the collective showed how much had changed. Surely there must be more to it, some strategy we are missing. Simple is not the same as easy, Kira said. It is hard to be kind when you are afraid. It is hard to trust when you have been betrayed. It is hard to forgive when you have been hurt. But we do these things anyway because we know what happens when we do not. What happens? The young Krill asked. Kira thought of Earth's history, of all the wars and hatreds and atrocities that her species had committed against itself. She thought of the slow, painful learning that had brought them to where they were now. The 2 world wars, the Cold Wars that followed, the environmental disasters that had nearly destroyed their home, the long, slow climb toward something better. We become our worst selves, she said. We become conquerors and oppressors. We build empires that crumble and leave only pain behind. We have seen this future in our own past. We choose differently now. The young delegates listened, with the attention of those who sense they are hearing something important. Your species has conquered before, one asked. Many times, Kira admitted. We have been everything you fear. We have been cruel and selfish and blind to the suffering of others. But we learned. Slowly, over centuries, we learned that there was another way. And you think we can learn too? Kira smiled. I know you can. You are learning already. The fact that you are asking these questions proves it. 20 years after first contact, the Galactic Council held a vote on full human membership. This time, there was no debate. The motion passed unanimously. But something else happened that day, something no one had expected. The Council passed a second motion, creating a new framework for interspecies relations. It was called the Haven Protocol, named for the world where Marcus Webb had once lifted a small alien child from a muddy ditch. The Haven Protocol was simple. It stated that any species encountering another in need was obligated to offer assistance if possible. It stated that friendship between species was to be encouraged and supported. It stated that conquest without provocation was no longer acceptable behavior. Many thought the protocol would fail. The old ways were too deeply ingrained, the habits of fear and domination too strong, and in some cases they were right. The protocol was violated, ignored, circumvented in a dozen ways. But it also succeeded, far more often than anyone predicted. Species that had been enemies for millennia began talking. Trade routes opened where once there had been only battlefields. Children born after the protocol learned a galaxy different from the one their parents had known. On Haven Prime, Alina Webb received the news with tears in her eyes. She stood in her grandfather's old farmhouse, surrounded by his things, and she felt him with her. We did it, grandfather, she whispered. Not just us, all of us together, just like you always said. The Sylph Elder was there, as she always was. She placed one gnarled hand on Alina's arm. He knew, she said. He knew this day would come. He told me near the end that humans had a gift for this, a gift for bringing others together. I did not know he said that. He said many things. The elder smiled, an expression she had learned from watching humans. He said that the universe was cold and dark, but that friendship was like a fire. One fire alone does not give much heat, but many fires joined together can warm the whole galaxy. Alina looked out the window at the world her grandfather had helped build. Human and Sylph homes stood side by side. Children of both species played together in the fields. Ships from a dozen worlds rose and fell from the spaceport he had watched grow from nothing. Many fires, she repeated. Many fires, the elder agreed. 100 years after first contact, humanity had spread across a quarter of the galaxy. Not through conquest, not through war, through friendship offered freely and received with growing trust. They had faced challenges. Some species had tried to take advantage of their kindness. Some had betrayed their trust. There had been wars, bloody and terrible, against those who could not accept the new ways. But the humans had not fought alone. Their friends stood beside them, species after species, united not by fear or domination, but by genuine bonds of affection and respect. The Vorthen, once the most feared conquerors in the galaxy, had transformed into the most reliable peacekeepers. Their warrior culture had not died, but it had found new purpose. They protected the weak now, defended those who could not defend themselves. They called it the way of Marcus, after the human farmer who had first shown them that strength could be used for kindness. The Thraxians had fractured into multiple factions, some clinging to the old ways of fear, others embracing the new philosophy of cooperation. The civil conflicts that followed were painful, but they led eventually to a new Thraxian culture, one that remembered its past but chose a different future. The Krell hive mind had evolved in ways their ancestors never imagined. Individual thought was no longer forbidden but celebrated. They had learned from humans that diversity was strength, that many minds thinking different thoughts could achieve more than one mind thinking the same thought forever. And the Elderlings, the oldest of all species, the Watchers who had seen civilizations rise and fall for millions of years, had found something they thought they had lost forever. Hope. You have surprised us, the current Elderling Council head told the current human ambassador, a descendant of Kira Chen whose patient smile was clearly inherited. In all our existence, we never thought we would see the galaxy change. We had concluded that war and conquest were the natural state of intelligent life, that peace was only ever a temporary pause between conflicts. And now, the ambassador asked, now we are not so certain. The patterns we thought were fixed are shifting. The futures we thought were inevitable are being rewritten. By you, by the friends you have made, by the fire you have started. The ambassador smiled. We just did what felt right. Yes, the Elderling said. That is what frightened us at first. That kindness could be natural rather than calculated. That friendship could be given without expectation of return. But now it is what gives us hope. Because if doing right feels natural to you, then perhaps it can become natural to others as well. On Haven Prime, a statue stood in the central square. It showed a human man reaching down to lift a small alien child from the earth. The inscription was simple. Marcus Webb, he offered friendship, the universe changed. Every year on the anniversary of first contact, beings from across the galaxy gathered at that statue to remember. Not just Marcus, but all the others who had chosen kindness over fear, trust over suspicion, friendship over conquest. They came because they wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. They came because they had learned that the universe did not have to be cold and dark. They came because they had found, in the company of humans and each other, something worth celebrating. A family. Not of blood, but of choice. Not of species, but of spirit. A family that stretched across the stars, held together by bonds that no weapon could break and no empire could dissolve. The universe had seen conquerors before. It had seen empires rise on the backs of the defeated and fall when those backs finally straightened. It had seen fear and domination, and all the cruelty that intelligent beings could inflict on each other. But it had never seen this. It had never seen a family that chose to be together. It had never seen an empire built not on power but on love. And as the celebration on Haven Prime stretched into the night, as beings of 100 shapes and sizes danced together under alien stars, the universe itself seemed to pause and take notice. Something new was growing, something that might in time change everything. It had started with a single act of kindness, on a day when a farmer chose to help instead of harm. And it was still growing, spreading from world to world, species to species, heart to heart. The fire that Marcus Webb had lit was burning brighter every day, and in its light, the darkness did not seem quite so dark anymore. The universe had its conquerors. It had its empires built on fear and force. But only humans had built an empire through friendship first. And that made all the difference.